بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وبارك على الأشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we've reached, we've come up to some of the last chapters pertaining to the Zakah. In our previous lesson, we were discussing the Urūd al-Tijara. We discussed the Zakah which is paid upon merchandise that a person trades with, as well as the Zakāt al-Fiṭr. And what did we mention are the conditions when paying the Zakah upon the Urūd al-Tijara, the merchandise? We mentioned there's some certain conditions. Intention. What is the intention?
To sell the merchandise.
That you intend to do business with those goods. That's the first intention. What else? You've attained the nisab. Naam, the specific amount, the nisab. And the nisab is how much? In accordance with the gold and silver. Naam. So the nisab is the same in Urūd al-Tijara as it is with the gold and the silver. Naam. And also, the condition? The time has elapsed. So, going back to the nisab as well, what did we mention in relation to the nisab being in conjunction with the gold and the silver?
Because when you sell your merchandise, that's what you usually get it for.
And so what do we do? Do we put it together? Do we not?
Together.
You put it together. So say, for example, your merchandise doesn't reach that amount, that nisab. However, you possess any gold or silver or something that's in its place, any cash, that would take you over the nisab. If you were to put those two together in combination of two, then you take that into consideration, and that is now the nisab, and you have to pay the zakat upon it. Does that make sense? Naam. And so that's the main thing that we were discussing from Urūd al-Tijara. As for the Zakāt al-Fiṭr, then the Zakāt al-Fiṭr is paid how and when? It's paid before? It's definitely paid for Eid al-Fitr. But what point? Before the Salat al-Eid. Nah, it's paid before the Salat al-Eid. Nah, and it's distributed how? As food products, food produce. So what for, as we discussed in this country, for the most part, we give our Zakāt al-Fitr as money. Is this something which is mukhalif, in opposition to the haqq? No, why?
Because although we collect the monies, we send it to the Muslim countries, and then we have an agent who will distribute the food. They won't be giving the monies.
Now, the important point is that it's distributed as food products. Naam. So the Zakāt al-Fitr, even though it's collected as monies and collected as cash, it's not distributed as that cash. So when it comes to, for example, Zakāt al-Mal, so if you like the yearly Zakah, then that, if a person collects money, it can be distributed as money. Naam. However, in this case, it may be collected as money for the benefit, for the maslahah, but when it's distributed as food produce. Naam, distributed as food produce. And so, due to the fact that the Zakāt al-Fitr can be paid up until the Salah time, what does that mean for the Salah time as well? Something we discussed as well. The Salat al-Eid, al-Fitr. It's for the reason that it's delayed. Naam, it's the reason that the Salat al-Eid al-Fitr is delayed. And what's the other reason that it's delayed as well? Salat for Eid al-Fitr. In order to eat something before the Salah. Naam, so that you fully establish that you have eaten during the day. And you've distinguished that day now from the Ayam al-Ramadan. Naam. As for Eid al-Adha, then the Salah is what? The Salah is brought forward. So it's prayed at its earliest opportunity. Why?
The slaughtering.
Of course, the slaughtering is legislated after the salah. Barakallahu fikum. So, as for today, then what we wish to discuss is the chapter pertaining to the ikhraj of zakah and the distribution of the zakah and how it's paid. And now, Ibn Qudāmah raḥimahullah, he mentioned لا يجوز تأخيرها عن قرب وجوبها إذا أمكن إخراجها فإن فعل فتلف المال لم تسقط عنه الزكاة. And so there's the payment of the zakah. How the person pays the zakah essentially first and foremost. He mentioned it's not permissible that a person delays paying the zakah once it is become an obligation. Now, if he has the ability to pay it. And if he delays it, and during that delay, that money, that wealth becomes wasted away, or there's a loss of that wealth, this does not now mean that the zakah is not upon him to pay. Now, so for example, a person, he has £10,000, let's speak in mithal. He has £10,000, and it comes round to the time for him to pay zakah. He's wanting to pay zakah. However, he delays it. Now, he delays paying that zakah. And within that time, he loses that money. So he has £10,000. How much zakah does he have to pay?
2.5%.
Which is?
2.5 grand. No, £250.
£250. Naam. £250. However, he loses all his money. So he delays paying it. So he's meant to pay it, for example, Ramadan. He says, I'll pay it next month. Shawwal. By the time Shawwal comes, for whatever reason, he loses that money. So, is he still upon him to pay the zakah? Yes. So he still needs to find that £250. Even if he does, even now, of course, he's lost all the money. So he's gone, of course, gone below the nisab. There's no money. However, because the time had elapsed, he has to pay the zakah. Now, it's established the payment of the zakah. Now, and thereafter, Ibn Qudāmah goes on to mention, وإن تلف قبله سقطت. And so, if the person has a loss of wealth before that time, before the time is upon him to pay the zakah, then the obligation is removed from him, of course. So it's not obligatory for him to pay that zakah. Why? Because that time has elapsed. Or that time had not arrived, rather. نعم. ويجوز تعجيلها إذا كمل النصاب. And so, Ibn Qudāmah goes on to mention, and it's permissible to pay it early. If the person has reached the nisab. Now, it's permissible to pay early if the person has reached the nisab. And so, what we understand from this, barakallahu fikum, is the ta'jiluha, yani bringing it forth and paying it early, is permissible limaslaha. So if there's a benefit in doing so, then it's permissible to bring it forward. So, mathalan, the person reaches the nisab, again, let's say 10,000, he ends up having £10,000. And, however, the whole year hasn't elapsed. And that year will elapse in Ramadan. However, he's in the month of Rajab. So it's 2 months for Ramadan. So, however, he sees a maslahah, he sees a benefit in paying it early. Then it's permissible for him to pay it early. Naam. So, in summary, in terms of permissibility, it's not permissible to delay it beyond its time. So it's not permissible to delay it beyond that time of a year. However, the permissibility in bringing it forward is there. Naam, with the condition of what? No, that's not the condition. That is reaching the nisab. Naam, the condition that is reached in the nisab. The proof that is mentioned here by Shaykh al-Fawzan. He mentioned that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is found in the Sunan al-Tirmidhi, he brought forth the zakah, the payment of zakah, of his uncle al-Abbas. Naam, due to a need. And so thus, he mentions an example of a need is that the Imam, he needs to prepare his army. Now, he needs to prepare the army. Or there's a greater need for the Muslims. So, Shaykh Fawzan here mentions preparing the army. How can zakah be a means of aiding in that regard? Why?
Buy inventory.
To buy?
To purchase inventory for the army.
Inventory, okay. But how can we say that the zakah goes towards them? Do we not understand the zakah to just be paid to the poor?
No, the army is one of the people.
The army
Is one of the people eligible for it.
Central. So from those that are eligible for zakah, and we'll discuss it further, are those that are the individuals that are fighting fi sabilillah. Naam. Those that are fighting fi sabilillah. So, no doubt anything that aids in that regard, the zakah, the demand of the zakah can be put forth for that purpose. Now, the demand of zakah can be put forth for that purpose. So, again, in summary, you cannot delay it, but you can bring it forth. You can bring it forward. However, you cannot bring it forward if you have not reached the nisab. Naam. If you're not reached the nisab. And thereafter, Ibn Qudāmah goes on to mention, فإن أجلها إلى غير مستحقها لم يجزئ. And so, if the person was to bring it forward and they would give it to the one that is not befitting of it, and so the one that is not deserving of it, and not from those that are deserving and from the categories of those that are deserving from the zakah, then they will not be rewarded for that. Naam. And so, he goes to mention, فإن دفعها إلى مستحقها فمات واستغنى أو ارتد أجزت. And so, if for example now, the person pays the zakah, he pays the zakah for the one that is befitting of it, deserving of the zakah. However, that person then dies. So dies before they can use the money, for example. Use that wealth. Or they enter a scenario where they are no longer in need. Or they apostate. That person is still eligible, or that person is still rewarded for that payment of the zakah. Why? Because the ibrah, barakallahu fikum, is regarding the time that they paid it. So they paid it. When they paid it, the person was hayy, he was alive. Or when they paid it, he was someone that was mustahiq, he was someone that was deserving. So for example, an individual pays zakah to a person. Zakah is distributed to an individual because he is faqir, he's poor. However, thereafter, he ends up attaining some wealth. Maybe inheritance, or he attains some wealth from, he gets a new job. That initial payment of zakah is still valid. And it's still something the person is rewarded for, inshaAllah. Likewise, if you pay it to the person, and then the person dies within that time of payment. Initially when it was paid, they were alive. Likewise, if you pay it to the person, and the person is Muslim. However, they apostate. When they paid it, when it was paid, they were Muslim. So, the zakah is something which is permissible. Naam. And so, thereafter, Ibn Qudāmah mentions the mas'ala, where he mentions that the sadaqah, وَلَا تُنْقَلْ الصَّدَقَةِ إِلَى بَلَدٍ تُقْصَرْ إِلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةِ إِلَّا أَنْ لَا يَجِدَ مَنْ يَأْخُذُهَا مِنْ بَلَدِهَا. And so, the zakah should not be sent to a land where you shorten the salah. Naam, it should not be sent to a land where you shorten the salah, except for if you do not find within your own land those that are able to take from the zakah. So, Shaykh ʿUbayd, raḥimahullāh, he mentions in relation to this mas'ala here, he mentions that there's asnaf, there's types, naam, and there's a discussion around it. So there's ahwal, there's different conditions in which these people are living. So the first is that there's a distance where you shorten the salah. Naam, this is where you shorten the salah. Then you have the distance where you don't shorten. Naam. And so this is where you shorten, this is where you don't shorten. And then you have a distance where for the most part you will shorten. Naam, so then there's maybe it's khilaf as to whether you shorten in that distance or not. However, the Shaykh mentions, generally speaking, in relation to this mas'ala, that you can give the zakah, and the zakah can be sent to a land other than the lands that the zakah has been paid in. Naam. Does that make sense? The proof he uses for that is the hadith in which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sent Muʿādh ibn Jabal to Yemen. Naam. It was regarding the people of Yemen. However, no doubt the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam was addressing Muʿādh ibn Jabal in Medina. And so the address was for a people of another land. So due to the fact that the address was for the people of another land, the zakah, it's understood that the zakah could be paid in whichever one of those lands. Naam, and it could be moved from one land to another and distributed in one land and another. This was the understanding of Shaykh ʿUbayd, raḥimahullah. Why? Because the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam discussed this affair of the zakah fi sha'n Ahl al-Yemen, the affair of Ahl al-Yemen. However, the payment of zakah could be paid within Medina or Yemen, irrespective. Allah Ta'ala knows best. And so those are the masail surrounding the payment of the zakah, and the chapter pertaining to the payment of zakah. Thereafter, we have the discussion around the next chapter, which is who is it permissible to pay the zakah to? ممن يجوز دفع الزكاة يجوز دفع الزكاة إليه. And there are ثمانية أصناف. There are 8 groups. 8 groups of individuals. And they are all outlined within the ayah, Surah At-Tawbah, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغامرين في سبيل الله وابن السبيل. And Allah Ta'ala outlines all 8. So the first of the 8 are the fuqara, The first of the 8 are the fuqara. And thereafter, the masākīn. The third are those that are in charge of the distribution of zakah, the ʿāmilīn ʿalayhā. The fourth is what is referred to as mu'allafatul qulūb, and that which brings the hearts together. The fifth is وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, يعني the amount paid for the freeing of a slave. Thereafter, al-Ghārimīn, yani those that are paying for the debts, the payment of the debts. Thereafter, you have those that are fighting fi sabilillah, mujahidun fi sabilillah. And finally, those mentioned, or the sinf mentioned, is ibn as-sabil. Wa ibn as-sabil. So the first is the fuqara and the masākīn. Fuqara and masākīn generally are referring to those that are impoverished, and those in poverty. Which of the two is more severe in terms of poverty? The fuqara. How do we know that as well?
From the Surah Kahf.
Or, well, I'll make my question more precise. How do we know that from this ayah? Let me mention first. Now, under the fuqara, I mentioned first. So, due to the fact that I mentioned first, hum ashad al-haja ilay, or ilayha. They are in the most need for that zakah. Naam, the most need for the zakah. And both of them take that wealth due to their financial need, their poverty. However, those that are from the fuqara are in greater need. And the miskin, he's the one that he may have an amount or something from his wealth that could suffice him, which is in opposition to the faqir. The faqir doesn't have that amount. The faqir does not possess that amount. And so, such an individual as well, the one that's faqir, is also regarded as being the one that is ajiz and al-kasb. He's unable to earn as well. So due to some form of circumstance, it could be a means that means that in terms of him, he's unable to earn and gather that amount in full. Or is an individual, lam yajid shay'an, he doesn't find anything from his wealth. And then, as we mentioned, the miskin is ahsan al-hal, is in a better scenario than him. Naam. However, he's still in need. He's still in a scenario of poverty and in a financial situation where he is impoverished. Thereafter, the ayah mentions al-ʿāmilīn, those that work in way of the zakah. Naam. So they're the ummal. And so they work in place of the imam, the wali al-amr. Why? Because the zakah is paid to the wali al-amr. The zakah is paid to the ruler. So, and it's the responsibility of the ruler to collect the zakah and distribute the zakah. So, why do we know that? What's the proof for that? the zakat is paid to the imam? What is the proof that the zakat is paid to the imam? Muhammad. What is the proof that zakat is paid to the imam? Give you a clue. We've mentioned this hadith already today. Hadith? It's hadith of Yemen. Was it Ali though? Hadith of Muḥādh, no. Hadith of Muḥādh is the proof. So, Hadith of Muḥādh is the proof. What is the wajh al-istidlal? How is this a proof? How is this hadith a proof? Prophet ﷺ told him. No.
Collect it and don't take from them the best of their wealth.
Don't take for the best of their wealth.
Showing that it's his responsibility to take it from them, not telling him what to take and what not.
Jayyid. Naam. But also, in what capacity was Muḥādh going to Yemen? As an imam. So Muḥādh, the Prophet ﷺ sent Muḥādh ibn Jabal to Yemen as a da'i first and foremost, to call the people to Islam. And if they obey him in that, he's going to be their imam. Naam. So the intent was for Muḥādh ibn Jabal to go to Yemen as the da'i, call him to Islam, and then thereafter as well to be the imam. And so it's his responsibility, to collect the zakah and to distribute the zakah. So, going back to our discussion here now, is that even though it's the responsibility of the imam to pay the zakah, even though it's the responsibility of the imam to distribute and pay the zakah, along with that though, is that he can outsource that responsibility. Now, if the imam of a land, there's su'uba, there's difficulty if he's going to collect the zakah for everyone and distribute to everyone else. So he can give that responsibility to others. Those individuals that he gives that responsibility to, they are the ʿāmilūn. Now, and thus they are what? Not imams, but eligible for? Eligible for zakah themselves. They're the ones that I mentioned within the ayah. Naam. So the one that the imam appoints to work upon the zakah itself. It will be the collection of the zakah or the distribution of the zakah. That they are, naam, eligible for zakah. Why?
Because they're given their time.
Naam. Because this is something in compensation, if you like, for the time that they're using to work upon the zakah. Work upon the collection and distribution of zakah. And so this the actual compensation, if you like, for that time is the zakah money or part of zakah money itself. Does that make sense? Now, so we have that third group. Then we have the mu'allafatul qulūb. And there's something on the affair of the mu'allafatul qulūb, the joining of the hearts, or the softening of the hearts by way of the zakah. What do you understand from that? Who are these individuals, ikhwan? So the non-Muslim, so he may incline to Islam. And so if you give him the zakah and you say that this is just for my deen, to give you the zakah, this may be the thing that finally brings them to embrace Islam. So when it inclines towards Islam, the non-Muslim. Who else?
People don't want to get married.
That's everyone. that means everyone's eligible.
They're relative.
That? Relative. Naam.
That is non-believers.
What else from mu'allafatul qulūb as well? As softening of the hearts. Conflict. Naam. It's a conflict. What else? I think someone mentioned it earlier. So we mentioned the non-Muslim also. Similar. The new Muslim. The new Muslim. And so he's just embraced Islam. So he's just learned about the ahkam of Islam, the rules of Islam, and the i'tiqad of Islam. And then they just embrace it and you give them something from zakah. Now, something to soften the heart. Another example as well can be that the zakah can be paid to an individual that is an opposer, however, to repel their harm. So a person could possibly be a non-Muslim. However, giving them something from the zakah could be a means of repelling their harm. Naam, and this is something that's also mentioned by Shaykh another than him. The repelling the harm by way of giving that zakah. This is mu'alafatul qulūb. And now, that's the fourth. Thereafter, we have as well the riqab. The money which is used to free the slave. So the money which is used to free the slave. So if that money is going directly for that purpose, then it can be used to free the slave. The sixth is the gharimun. The gharimun, those that have debts. Those that have debts. And the reason why the gharimun are mentioned, the paying of debt, is because it's from the means of islah or islah that bayn. Islah that bayn, to reconcile between parties. Because if you have the debtor, the creditor, if the person's debt gets paid, no doubt this brings about the closeness between the parties. If a person's debt gets paid, how many times do you hear, for example, Fulan, Abdullah, so he's okay, but he owes me money, Nah, he's a good guy, but don't lend him the money, It's an issue. It becomes an issue. However, if now, for example, that's been paid, Naam, ala ay tariqin kan. The person, the creditor, the one who's owed money, generally speaking, as long as that debt gets paid, he's happy. He's not going to ask where's it come from, especially if you trust the individual. And he's going to trust it's going to come from halal means. He's happy that that debt gets paid. And so that's islah that bayn. It brings about reconciliation between those parties. Now, similar as well, going back to mu'alafatul qulūb. It can be from the means of bringing about islah, the rectifying between parties. Now, as for this affair of the gharim, and the one that is in debt, and the person paying the zakah, then they're of two types. The first is al-gharim li nafsihi, and the second is al-gharim li ghayrihi. And so the first is the one that has a debt and he pays that debt, using the zakah for his own debt. Naam. Or you have the one that pays the zakah for other than himself. Does that make sense? So the first one, he has to pay zakah. He also has a debt. So that the zakah can be used to pay the debt, as well as the person or another individual has a debt, so that zakah can be used to pay the debt of another individual as well. Allah Ta'ala knows best. Then we have the seventh from this asnaf. The seventh is the fi sabilillah. Jihad fi sabilillah. And so, the jihad fi sabilillah, and the one that's fighting jihad fi sabilillah, i.e. the one that is striving in order to make the kalimatullah al-a'la, or ulya, the most high. The kalimah of la ilaha illallah, to make that the most high. And so, it's mentioned that the person, zakah is paid for such an individual. And so, an example of that is that it could be a combination of things. You can combine between that as well. An example of that is that the person is going out to fight lillah, and so his debts are paid for him. Naam. Why? So that he has no other commitments now. Does that make sense? So he has no other commitments. And there's the ease for him to do what he needs to do. Rather than him being busied with paying the zakat and the likes of that. Some Ahlul Ilm also mention within this individual fi sabilillah is the talib ilm. The talib ilm. The one that has embarked upon a safar or rihla fi talab al-ilm. He's embarked upon the journey seeking knowledge. Why? Because it's fi sabilillah. وهو نوع من الجهاد. And then the eighth individual mentioned is the Ibn al-Sabil. And Ibn al-Sabil هو المسافر. Ibn al-Sabil is the musafir, the one that's as a traveler. منقطع به. And so he's been cut off from his journey. His journey's been cut. For example, he's upon a journey and he loses his money, or his money is stolen. And so, from the zakah money, he's given that which suffices him to complete his journey. So from the zakah money, he's given that which suffices to complete his journey. Now, and likewise as well, Ibn Qudāmah, he mentions that it's permissible to pay this zakah to one of these asnaf. It's not conditional that you have to find all eight. Now, it's not conditional you have to find all eight and have to pay upon all eight. Rather, it's possible that a person just pays to one. Naam. And from the proofs of that as well, again, same hadith, Muʿādh ibn Jabal. Naam, because the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions, فَعْلِمْهُمْ, inform them and teach them, إِنَّ اللَّهَ افْتَرَضَ عَلَيْهِمَ صَدَقَةً, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the sadaqah, the zakah, essentially, an obligation upon them. Thereafter, he mentions, alayhi salatu wassalam, تُؤْخَذْ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُرُدُّ إِلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ, that is taken from the rich, the aghniya, and given to the fuqara, the poor. And that's all he mentioned, alayhi salatu wasalam, in the hadith. And so we understand from that within this is the zakah can be paid to just one of those groups. However, these are the groups of the individuals that are eligible for it. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. And with that, inshallah, we'll conclude. بارك الله فيكم. نكتفي بهذا القدر. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم. وصلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Inshallah, our next lesson will be, inshallah, the final lesson regarding the zakah. And it's the opposite of what we discussed today, i.e. who are not eligible for zakah. I.e. who specifically are not eligible to be paid to. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Zakāh khairan. No.
For example, what if someone owes you a debt?
What if someone?
Someone owes, like, for example, someone owes you money.
Yeah.
And that person's in debt.
Someone owes you money,
Yeah.
but that person's in debt.
So the person's in debt, he owes you money though.
Because he's in debt because he owes you money. I feel like you're saying he's in debt twice then.
My words aren't coming out right, sorry.
Because if you say he owes you money
So
and then he's in debt
so
to
he's
you
indebted
though.
to you, yeah.
Huh?
So he's indebted to you.
Yeah. Okay. Now.
What can you just clear that for him or something like that from as your zakah or something like that?
Yeah. So for example, if the person owes if you're the creditor, let's say, and you need to pay zakah, so and you say that you forego that debt, then that could be a portion of the zakah or it could be all the zakah, depending on what the amount is. Why? Because that person is eligible for that because he has a debt. But now it's not a case of you have to give him the money for him to give it back to you. Understand? Because if you said that this is foregone, and that is the amount which is paid, and that is a clearance of that. Depending on who it is, depending on who it is, you give him the money like this is account money that you to pay someone and then it doesn't give. And it might be a new debt. Yeah, the villa. But now, essentially, that could be done as well. Now, so not only can a person pay the zakat upon their own debts, they can forego the zakat upon the debt which is owed to them as well. So it works for both the creditor and the debtor.
Does that work for that person as well as paying if he's going to do zakah? So
Yeah, of course, because it's that's something that is kind of taken off that amount. No.
if you decide to bring your zakah payment forward,
Yeah.
do you still have the rest of the year until a new period starts, or does the time period begin again?
So say you bring it forward.
Yeah.
So let's say you bring it forward 2 months. You said you have 14 months now before you have to pay.
No. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. From what's understood is that as soon as you've paid it, that's when that time period begins. So it's 12 months from when you've paid it. So 12 months from that time. And hence why people bring it forward. A lot of the time people bring it forward to Ramadan. Because if they bring it forward to Ramadan, they know that it's next Ramadan they have to pay it. If that makes sense. And that's an example of one of the masalih, or one of the benefits of paying zakat early. No.
What do you need to, like, with the zakat, what do you need to have? Is it like savings, or is it just money? Like, say right now you got, I don't know, like say you work monthly, yeah, you get paid monthly,
Yeah.
but you ain't got savings. You just maybe might have like £400 or £500 to just keep going like that.
Yeah.
You still need to pay zakat.
So once you reach the nisab,
So what's that?
it's the amount. We've gone through the amount. I can't remember how much we said it was now, but there's a certain amount in terms of silver.
Okay.
No.
86 grams of gold.
Or a certain amount of gold. So you reach
like
that.
savings.
Savings you can say. But let's say now if you reach that amount, let's just say for example, it's £1,000, right?
Yeah.
Or the value of £1,000. You reach that now, and it's Ramadan. Let's say, okay. As long as you remain over that £1,000 for a whole year, that's when you pay the zakah. Do you understand? So the example you're giving now, when you're working, okay, you get £1,000, you pay bills, you pay this and that, you'll go below it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you never stay above it. You have to be on it or above it for the whole period of a year before you pay the zakah. But the example of a person has wages and then he has outgoings at the same time, then he may never actually be on that amount and above it for that whole elapsed period of time. It's for if the person that has it. And so the example, as the example you gave is if you have savings. If you have savings. But again, it may not always be savings. It may be other assets as well that you have to pay this account. If that makes sense. No.
So, do you know how you mentioned in the hadith it says take from the aghniya? Aren't most people who earn a wage monthly masakeen?
There could be amongst them, yeah. Especially in this country.
Yeah. So those people who earn a wage,
No.
maybe they to save something above the nisab, but they're still masakeen. Do they still have to give it?
They'll still have to give it. But why? Because they would. If you look at the word ghani itself, first and foremost, the one that's self-sufficient. So they'll be self-sufficient. Or sufficient in terms of their wealth. Also, the hadith tu'khadh min al-aghniya is if anything is a general explanation of zakah. Now, generally zakah is taken from the aghniya, given to the fuqara. Generally. However, we understand there's other nusus, other texts that explain the details of zakah in terms of who it's taken from, when is it taken, at what point is it eligible, at what are the conditions. You understand? So, as Imam al-Za'i mentioned, the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah yu'āmilūn al-nusus mu'āmala wāḥida. So Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they treat the text as if they're one text. Naam. So in isolation, yes, you might say that the narration mentions that it's just the aghniya. But we have the ayah as well. So we have all the 8 as well as the nusus that mention how the zakah is paid and how the zakah is distributed. So because of that, there's a clearer picture of how it's distributed and paid. So even if the person he might regard himself, if he's from the masakeen, then he won't have to pay anyway, and Allah knows best. Because if he's living hand to mouth, as they say, where he's earning a wage, he earns £2,000 a month, and he's paying bills of £2,100 a month, then he's never going to have to pay it because he's never going to be above the nisab in terms of his wealth. No, Allah, no.
As regarding for the ones that the imam chooses appoints, does it have to be specific people that he chooses?
Specific people?
It could be someone that's rich and now they're not able. Does that mean they're no longer able to pay this person? Because
they're no longer able to. The last bit of the question, I don't understand. So
let's say the people that he's choosing.
Yeah.
Is there a specific type of group people that he has to choose from,
Oh,
or is it
no.
really anyone?
Because remember, he's the wali al-amr, so he has to choose those who he trusts. So it just has to be anyone that he deems to be trustworthy to deal with the wealth. If that makes sense.
So you could still give zakah and take from.
So he still could give zakah and take from the zakah. Yeah? He still could be, because he's eligible. It's like, let's say for example, you have sadaqah, general sadaqah given to the masjid. Naam. And he gives sadaqah to the masjid. However, he's employed by the masjid. So, because for his time. So even though he gives the money for the sadaqah, he actually receives something from it as well, because he's compensated for the time. The same thing here. He gives the zakah, but now he's being tasked with this particular job of dealing with the zakah. So because of that, he takes something from it as well. Naam. So it could be both. It could be both. Allah knows best. As going back to the initial question of the person that pays the zakah and he has the debt as well. So he's not just paying it for the debt. No.
If a person owes a debt, can they pay zakah to themselves to pay that debt?
Yeah, so they can use the zakah money that they owe to pay debts. No.
One more question, Ustad, sorry. You know, if like say you're trying to save money now, you work with, like you said, hand to mouth, or whatever, and you're trying to save for like say Hajj or Umrah.
Yeah.
Can you do that without paying zakat if you obviously because you've got your plan to?
No, you pay zakah still, and inshallah Allah will increase your wealth. From the ahdaf, from the goals of paying zakat, it's a means of purifying your wealth. When the wealth's purified, it increases it in barakah. So even though you might have all of the best intentions in terms of what you're going to do with that wealth, you want the wealth to be in the best scenario possible. Like anything in our living, naam, in our life, we want to be mubarak, naam, not him. Just generally, well, I see mubarak. So. So, from the means of our wealth being like that, is that we pay sadaqah for it, and we give zakah. So when we pay the zakah, mathalan, we should look at it like this is a means of increasing our wealth. Just like, for example, the person he's low on wealth, and he says, you know what, I'm going to do umrah. Now, why? Because he knows umrah increases his wealth. So he takes the means as well that have been legislated to increase the wealth. From the means of increasing the wealth isn't just working, but it's also purifying the wealth with sadaqah. And zakah is the greatest of that. No. Allah. No.
Paying charity, paying zakah in your own city, like you're saying something about the traveller,
Yeah.
the person that don't. So is it advised, like in the day where we live now,
Yeah.
to pay zakah here, is it better to pay it here than like
You can pay anywhere, to be fair. As in terms of the sadaqah and the zakah, then that's something which is paid to whoever is deserving of it. No? And generally what you find, Allah knows best, maybe historically, zakah was sent out more. No, historically, because the need was seen more outside of that. However, what you find now is that there's a current need within a lot of the people within the land. So it's anyone that fits within those categories. And so you don't just specify this or that. No? However, it's something which is an exception to that, which some people do, is when it comes to the aqiqah. And the people will say that I'm going to do the aqiqah abroad. No, because it's cheaper. It's just cheaper in another country. However, as Shaykh Fawzan, he mentions the aqiqah should be done in your land. No, so that's the difference between the two. No. Well, yeah, cool. Okay. Barakallahu feekum. السلام صلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه